Most people think linear gradients in CSS are only used for smooth color transitions. But in this video, we're using them for something completely different. Something like this. We're actually using linear gradients to build a full background grid without using a single image. This is a skeuomorphic 3D elastic toggle switch. It utilizes multi-layered shadowing and complex keyframe sequences to mimic a physical sliding component embedded in a technical grid. Now, open your VS Code and create the HTML file named toggle.html. Then link the CSS style sheet, which we'll create afterwards. Also in the HTML, create the input tag for the toggle. Then we will create our CSS file. Now, at the top, we use a simple CSS reset to remove default spacing and make everything consistent across browsers. Then we center everything on the screen using CSS Grid, which keeps the layout clean and perfectly aligned. I'm going to open my live preview to show all the code changes with CSS visuals. Resize that a bit, and we continue with CSS coding. Now, let's break linear gradient logic. In the body, we have two linear gradients layered together. The first one uses a 90-degree direction, which means it runs from left to right. But instead of blending colors smoothly, it creates a sharp line at exactly 2 pixels, and then immediately becomes transparent. Then we add a second linear gradient. This one runs from top to bottom and uses the same hard stop technique. Now we get horizontal lines. When you combine both of them, you get a full grid-like graph paper built entirely with CSS. And because we control the background size, we can adjust the spacing of the grid to make it tighter or wider. I have an issue with my VS Code. When typing colors, it automatically changes to RGB format. So if you have its solution, tell me on the comments section. On top of that, we use animations to smoothly transition the colors and the position of the toggle. But notice this, the gradients themselves are not being animated. They stay static, acting as a visual foundation, while the movement and color changes bring the interface to life. Next, we style the checkbox to look like a modern toggle switch. We define its size, shape, and positioning, and remove the default browser appearance so we can fully customize it. We also use CSS variables to define the colors for different states, off, mid-transition, and on, making the design easier to manage and update. Now, the small handle inside the toggle is created using a pseudo element so that we later map it to keyframes for transitions. I think our live preview is unfunctional due to JavaScript, which we'll have at the end of the video. So I'm going to try as possible to give the output in other ways. Good, we're done with toggle styling now. We add a dark mode using a media query. This automatically adjusts the colors based on the user's system settings, making the design more adaptable. So overall, the gradients build the visual structure, while the rest of the code handles layout, interaction, and polish. Now, the animation part, using keyframes property, these animations control both the movement of the handle and the color transitions of the switch. But notice this, the gradients themselves are not being animated. They stay static, acting as a visual foundation, while the movement and color changes create the interaction. Our first keyframe animation is to animate the background off colors with the on, mid, and of CSS variables. This covers the part of the graph background when the toggle is either on or off. The same technique is applied to the second keyframe animation, which is on background. That is, background being visible at given time frames of toggle being on. Now you can see the difference, to and from and vice versa, when the two keyframes are complete. the third and fourth keyframes animation, handle off, handle on. This simply animates the position change of the hole in the toggle and its shadow movement either left or right on click. Initially, we hard a preview issue, so our output will be visible once we add our JavaScript. Just correct the indentation here. Notice that this one keyframe is a full animation from mid-level, which is 50%, and 2, which is the end of animation. Handle on applies the same logic as handle off, but the difference only comes in animation path. Yes, Now we're done with CSS and mainly the animation part, so I'll preview the output once the JavaScript is done, which is the next step. Switch to HTML, and now let's add the script tags. I'm just going to use the correct HTML format by pressing Shift, 1, and Enter. Rearrange everything well. I'll change the title to Linear Toggle. The script listens for any click on the page. When you click, it checks if the element you clicked is the toggle. If it is, it removes the default class from that element. This is important because it prevents the animation from being stuck in its initial state, allowing the toggle to animate smoothly every time you interact with it. So the JavaScript here is very minimal, it's just enhancing the behavior. The real heavy lifting is done by CSS. Done. Now let's refresh for preview. Everything looks nicely done. Thank you for following up this tutorial. Stay creative, keep building.